the equation E is equal mc squared, in which energy is put equal to mass multiplied with the square of the velocity of light, showed that very small amount of mass may be converted into a very large amount of energy, and vice versa. The mass and energy were in fact equivalent, according to the formula mentioned above. This was demonstrated by Kokraft and Walton in 1932 experimentally.
You've got it right here. S4 with E squared in conjunction with Spaced Out Radio.
Alien contact. S4. UFOs. Bigfoot. 9/11. The Greys. The Illuminati. Cover-ups. RH negative blood. What are they hiding from
Sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed.
Now, the men behind the mics, Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and the SOR Spacewire's Eric Markham. You can find more at spacedoutradio.com.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
Now, let's travel into the universe. It's S4 with E squared.
All right. How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to S4 with E squared with myself, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, and Eric Markham from the Spaced Out Radio Newswire and S4 with E squared. How you doing, Markham?
Doing great. How about you?
Good. I'm getting over that damn flu. Well, I've been over that flu for, I guess a couple of days now, but feeling weak. And it's been a little warmer out and raining and the snow's gone and don't know what to expect.
It's in the 60s here and raining like a cow pissing on a flat rock.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad storms going on lately in some of the Midwestern and southern states. So, the opinions and views expressed in S4 E squared do not reflect that of Spaced Out Radio. Spaced Out Radio, if you aren't familiar with it, is our umbrella affiliate. They are on every night from 9 p.m. to midnight. We follow them on Sunday nights, obviously, at midnight from Spaced Out Weekend. You can find them at www.spacedoutradio.com. And don't miss it. It's the best in paranormal radio out there. And then we get, of course, in S4, cover all the darker side of conspiracy, UFO, and alien, the things that most people don't like to talk about. We love talking about it, don't we, Markham?
We sure do.
And for those that don't know, Markham is also an actual scientist, unlike what many call as the science of the paranormal. He actually is the science of the paranormal. got into that discussion here last week, as a matter of fact, in Forest Moon Paranormal about what science is and is not in the paranormal. And people still think, I've got some fancy gadgets and cool electronic toys, and we're out there to prove the science of the paranormal. Yeah, with toys. That's what you're doing. You're playing with toys, and that's all you're doing. You're not proving science. So what's your thoughts on that again, Markham?
Well, the bad thing is really science. If you're doing science, it's kind of the boring part. It's established, like right now I've assembled some different recording devices, from microcassette digital to regular cassette, the old style cassettes, and I'm establishing, using a Faraday cage and a soundproof box, what we're getting for background, what the microphone would just pick up background. And something I think people forget is, if you look on the back of most devices, there's an FCC warning that says this device will accept interference from outside. Basically, it says this thing's, if a strong enough source is outside, this device is going to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm trying to do is get this baseline established so that when I actually start going out and doing some EVP work, I can figure out what's noise and what might possibly be a real EVP. And it's boring to sit there and do an hour test and then listen to the hour test to see what kind of noise it picked up. So science can be boring.
It can.
Discoveries are yeah.
And
that's
just to,
what you got to do.
Just to explain real quick what happened last weekend, because it was kind of hard to explain to some, but my internet went down right before the 2-hour mark, and I hate satellite internet sometimes, but my satellite went out. But what was weird is I could still see the chat room chatting, and they're all going, "What happened? I don't hear Cooper anymore." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I'm not connected." So yeah, it was a Spreaker satellite issue, and hopefully that doesn't happen tonight. Living in the mountains with different weather systems and all that kind of crap that goes on. That's going to change here in the next couple months, maybe 3 months, whenever we get the budget for it. We're going to switch internet so we don't have to deal with satellites no more. Now, let's talk about what we're possibly going to try doing with the glorified EMF meter. Now, what we're going to do for the QRT team, and for those that don't know what the QRT, us in Forest Moon now, we have an astral team, and that's basically what a bulk of our workload does, is through the astral. So we take paranormal cases internationally. Now, locally, I have a lot of crazy shit that goes on up here in the mountains. We have everything from Bigfoot to UFOs to government conspiracy that goes on up here. And, the ghosts and the spirits and the entities, that's just a small drop in the bucket compared to what goes on up here in the mountains. And so what we're going to do is build a quick reactionary team. Now, for some of you that don't know, Mark and I are both veterans, so we, in Forest Moon anyway, we tailor a lot of what we do in the military. So, a quick reactionary team in the military is the team that goes in and rescues an infantry unit that's being overrun by the enemy. We're taking that to the paranormal level by using that as basically a paranormal emergency team. So we're taking the cases where somebody calls in and they're being attacked by a spirit, or they actually are physically witnessing a UFO right now, or they're being attacked, which is going to be rare, but they're being attacked by a Bigfoot, or, something dramatic. And we're the ones that are going to run out and deal with whatever we need to deal with. My survival skills instructor, is actually a Special Forces retired first sergeant. So they're going to be learning Special Forces style survival. We're going to be training on shielding, grounding, basically psychic protection. We've got Markham for a scientist. If we get labs and analysis, it's being mailed to North Carolina to his lab, and Markham's going to test it. We have radiation gear, and we have a medium in our team. Plus, we have 2 dedicated astral team workers that will be flying, without, lack of a better word, will be traveling with us from the astral. So it's going to be a quite extensive, quite aggressive team that we're putting together. The training for that's going to start end of February, first part of March. What we're looking at building, Markham's looking at building, is basically a magnified EMF detector that's going to be in a Faraday cage and using a satellite antenna attached to a Ford Explorer. It's going to be a truck-sized EMF detector. Basically, what the principle we're going to be experimenting on is, do UFOs use the same fabric and time, I guess you could say, as spirits and entities do? And if they do, could we track them with an EMF that was big enough, a bigger scale? I guess that's the easiest way to explain it, Markham.
Yeah, right now I'm thinking that we need to get a hold of a old microwave that somebody doesn't want, because I think I'm going to have to use what I'm thinking is you got to have a carrier wave, and I'm going to have to use the tube out of the microwave to act as a carrier wave for our signal. Magnetron tube, that's what I was trying to... Right now it's just a matter of I'm drawing things up and trying to come up with... We basically are we're trying to combine an EMF meter with a radar.
Basically, yeah.
And probably have to have a laser on it. Just for pointing purposes, if nothing else.
And then we're also going to use the same satellite, basically a DirecTV dish, as a directional microphone. Because what we have going on in the mountains as well is a strange vibration or a strange humming noise. And it would take a magnified microphone to try to pinpoint and pick that up. I'd be kind of curious.
Have you got any? Have you been able to come up with any frequency data on it, or is it you can just hear it? Do you have like a range it falls in?
No, and that's the thing, and it's a 20-mile radius. So, yeah, I'm not sure what to think about it, and I haven't heard anything new about it either. I don't know if it faded away or if it's just people are getting so used to hearing it, it's kind of drifted. So for some of these toys, what we're going to do too is, so we're going to file or actually reactivate our state status, our nonprofit status for the state, probably around the first part of February, and hopefully have our federal status activated around May-ish. Now, once we get our nonprofit statuses set in stone, then I'll basically make a kind of a resume or kind of a packet of sorts. And right now I'm making a list of all the paranormal shops and all the magical shops and whatnot that I can get my hands on. And I'm going to send them all basically an application with what we are, what we do, what we're about with our nonprofit status, and see about getting some endorsers out there. They're willing to donate sage, stones, with a specific list of what we use. EMF meters, or handheld type stuff. Well, whatever they were willing to donate, and if they actually make equipment that they want tested out, then by all means we'll test it out for them with our QRT team. But most of them won't be willing to help anybody out unless you have some kind of a nonprofit status. So we're working on getting that reestablished. And then we'll go from there. Meantime, and you'll get to see it here in September when we have our Paracon, but we're going to take our outdoor patio and completely plexiglass it where the screens are, put real doors in, put a rug down, and turn that into our S4 studio. It's going to be my mate's sewing room. It's going to be our QRT office. And yeah, it'll be cool. So let's see here. We left off last week with banshees. So we're going to start off with, and I don't even know what anyone heard last week either. Because I kind of, my studio kind of cut out. So we're going to leave off with Banshee. We're not going to hit Banshee. And we're going to start off with Bar Guest. I'm not sure if anyone heard Bar Guest or not, but a Bar Guest is a kind of bogey. It has horns, dangerous teeth and claws, and fiery eyes. It can take many forms, but usually is a shaggy black dog. Upon the death of the prominent figure, it rounds up all the dogs in the community and leads them on a procession throughout the streets howling. Now, if you look through history, you actually hear about things like that went on, especially in the UK. Here in America every once in a while. But you have, dogs that go through town. Is it a Bar Guest? Yeah, it could be. Now we got Basilisk, a highly poisonous fairy, which is reputed to hate humans. It can kill by looking at, touching, or breathing on a human being or an animal. Now, here's what's funny. Oh God, what's in a Torchwood? Have you ever heard of the series? It's a UK-based series called Torchwood, and it's based on Doctor Who.
Yeah. Oh Lord, I can't remember all the characters. Captain Jack and yeah. I think I watched every episode of it there ever was.
You remember the faerie episode? Season 1, episode 5, I believe it was. And yeah, I've probably seen the episode 20 times in the last week because my 5-year-old is completely enthralled with Torchwood. He's 5. I'm like, wow, I've never even heard of Torchwood. Where the hell did you come up with it?
I think I watched it back when it was on oh crap, Netflix.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't even know. Apparently my father-in-law found it, or my sister-in-law got it on disc or something, and now he saw one episode and he loves Torchwood. Like, yeah, a 5-year-old's got his dad beat. So anyway, yeah, the fairy episode in Torchwood is cool. I actually like it, and they make it look like the fairies are the bad guys. In reality, they really weren't. They took the little girl, and because she was one of them. And I thought it was really cool in the very end when they showed the Cottonwood fairies, Cottingham fairies, and the fairies actually have the faces of little girls. And then, the little girl that was a character of this particular episode was one of the Cottingham fairies. And it's amazing how much fact they kind of intertwine with TV and movies. Right down to fairies. So now we have Balkan. Balkan is also Bogan, a type of hobgoblin. Like most fairies, they're fond of tricks. Sometimes they're dangerous and sometimes they're helpful. Basically, they're like anything else. If it benefits them, then okay, they'll help you. But if it don't, screw off. Now we have Bendith Waimamau, pronounced Bendith Umame. Okay, I was wrong. These guys are based out of Wales, named for fairies, translates to mother's blessing. This phrase is used as a prayer to protect from evil. Bendith, I'm not going to try, mother's blessing, which was the name of the fairies of the Carmarthenshire country in Wales. This saying became a prayer spoken to ward off harm. They're rather unpleasant clan of Welsh fairies. They're ugly creatures, sometimes regarded as a result of interbreeding between goblins and fairies. They steal children. They substitute them for their own ugly ones called crimbles. Otherwise, let's see. What they call crimbles, you'll often hear it called changelings. Through the intervention of a witch, the parents can regain the stolen child, who will remember nothing of its time with the mammal, except for a vague recollection of sweet music. Now, if you want to hear fairy music, oh God, what's his name? Bob Stadler, I think his name is. Well, you look on YouTube for Bob Stadler, and fairy music's actually awesome. So now we have Black Angus. Black Angus is a large black dog with yellow eyes and sharp fangs, who roams the northern English and Scottish countryside, showing himself to those who will die within a fortnight. They originated in England and Scotland. Other names for this fairy are Cusith, and I hate trying to pronounce Celtic names, or Gabrel's hounds. Its element is water. Black Angus is a large black dog with yellow eyes, sharp teeth. Contact with this fairy is not advised. You think? Black Angus, let's see. It's funny, and it's funny they kind of have to tell you that, because some people would, oh well, look at this, just like a kid that conjures a demon. Yeah, this looks cool. Let's go conjure this up. Yeah, I wouldn't. So Black Angus, she is a hag. She is unique in the fact that she is a cannibal. Black Forest, a deep forest in the center of the four cities and four corners of the Shee, on the edge of Crystal Lake, holds nymphs and other highly dangerous unseelie creatures. Precaution necessary. Black Forest, for those who aren't familiar, is also a very large forest in Germany, which is known to be full of elves, dwarves. Dave's not here, so I'll say gnomes, and of course fairies. So, bloodlines. A fairy or half-mortal who carries the core powers inherited from its magical parentage. Only fae and half-mortals of the correct bloodlines can perform certain tasks. See Prince Charming. Blue Men of the Minch. They dwell in the strait between Long Island and the Cheyenne Islands. They are responsible for sudden thunderstorms and shipwrecks. It is said that you may stop them by speaking in rhymes. Let's see. The ship sinking attempts may be thwarted if you are an adept rhymer. Some think they may be fallen angels. Now we have Bocan. Their sole purpose was to attack and mutilate travelers. Now, if you ever heard of the stories of crossroads, anytime you come into a crossroad, whether it's physical or if it's seen as a symbolism in tarot, because tarot also brings a crossroads as well. It's supposed to be a very magical spot. It's supposed to be a very strong fairy spot. You're not advised to stand in a crossroad. So the Bocan, their sole purpose was to attack and mutilate travelers. They're air fairies. They're found in the Isle of Skye in Scotland. And again, they say it's best to avoid these fairies. Now, what we're going to do, we're actually going through my list that I've compiled from numerous research sources I've gone through. And these are all the races. And then I'm going to go and tackle mythological beasts. That'll be a whole other show. And we'll talk about unicorns, dragons, Pegasus, regular mythological, and a lot of them you probably haven't even heard of before. If you have, I'd be surprised, and that'd be cool. But we're also going to talk about fairy lore. What keeps fairies away? What kills fairies? What draws them? How do you work with a fairy? Things like that. iron, and actually if you find a fairy ring, you put a nail through it, and they won't be able to use that fairy ring anymore. Bodak, also bugbear or bugaboo. They slide down chimneys to kidnap naughty children. Bodoak is an ancient fairy man from the Unseelie court. Now, I'm not sure if I've got Seelie and Unseelie in here, but the Unseelie court is what the Celts called the negative court, or the bad fairies, whereas the Seelie court, it was the court where the good fairies were. The Unseelie court steals children, though it limps, moves at the speed of a horse, shimmering red eyes. Bogarts, they're cousins to the brownies. Although their intentions are very different, Bogarts will adopt a house just for the sheer delight of destroying things. They're very ill-tempered and greedy. They're earth fairies found in Scotland. Let's see, they're also known as hobgoblins, or the boogeyman. They are male dwarves. They're very ill-tempered. Let's see, and I've got multiple different sources, so some of them are duplicating it, so I'm kind of reading through it. It's known as a solitary fairy. They're associated with the northwest. And I mentioned directions like northwest, this fairy is part of the air, this fairy is part of the east. That comes into play when some people that conjure these fairies, they have to conjure, or they have to call them from the direction they're known for. So Bogarts break down into two general categories. There are domestic Bogarts, those that haunt houses and that frequently indulge in poltergeist activity. And this information is actually going to come in later on a future show, where we actually compare spirits, fairies, alien abduction, and cryptids, and signs and symptoms between. If you're a paranormal investigator, we'll be looking at all the different signs from all these different areas. If you walk in and you hear footsteps and you see sprinkles of light, things like that, it could be a fairy. It could just be a spirit. So, things like that is what we're going to be looking at in a future show. Once we get done with all the fairy races, we've already done the alien races, and we'll compare them all. There are those that haunt a road, a bridge, or a field out in the wilds. They don't go to houses. The word haunt is used advisedly here, as there is often confusion about whether a Bogart is a ghost or a fairy, or perhaps somehow both. Certainly there are cases from the 18th and 19th centuries where supernatural beings that we would call ghosts are termed instead Bogarts. Bogarts are often associated with water. Likewise, they are said to eat small fairies. Owl pellets were interpreted as the bones of fairies devoured and excreted by Bogarts. They also devoured fern, a plant with fairy associations, and a plant that supposedly encouraged invisibility. Now, Midsummer is a pagan holiday, which is known for fairies. It's a fairy holiday. And if you go out in the woods at midnight and you pluck a fern frond, it's supposed to give you the art of invisibility as well as the art of seeing fairies. That's where they get that information from. It was generally felt that animals could see Bogarts more easily than humans. Well, of course, animals could see in the third and fourth dimension, so it makes sense. And when a horse became frightened, it was said the animal had seen a Bogart. It should finally be noted that even in a domestic setting, Bogarts tend to be unfriendly towards human neighbors, and some are downright hostile. The home region, the Bogart originally was a part of the folklore of the English North, the English Midlands, and parts of the Marches. However, by the 19th century, the Bogart had become a fairy associated above all with Lancashire and the South Pennines. Physical description, Bogarts sometimes humanoid. There are a handful of references to naked men. They sometimes appear in animal form, and above all, they are shapeshifters, moving in between different shapes. Some have the most notable talent of detaching and throwing their head after their victims. Earliest attestation and etymology, there are 16th century references to Bogarts. The word Bogart probably comes from a related and more general term, bogle. It is part possible there was a Celtic term lurking in the background, though this is far from clear. Bogart locations. There's literally scores of Bogart places in the northwest. However, Townley, Bogart Bridge between Burnley and Todmorden, and Bogart Hole in Pendle Forest, and Bogart Hole Clew to the north of Manchester are three famous Bogart hunts. A particularly vivid Bogart encounter comes from the life of Samuel Bamford. As noted above, it is not clear whether it's particularly Bogart is ghost or fairy. The most famous Bogart story of all, though, is associated with several northern fairies that flirt. To take Bogart, a horse shies and flees. To turn up Townley's Bogart, making an unexpected and not particularly pleasant appearance. And the Bogart was all but forgotten in traditional lore when it made a surprising comeback via first children's writer Susan Cooper. She wrote the Bogart. And then, of course, the Harry Potter series. You got anything there, Markham? You still awake?
Oh yeah, I just that Bogart became such a broad spectrum term. I think it up in the mountains where I used to live, it was boogers.
Yeah.
And it meant the exception. They called them boogers, but they were Bogarts, Boogeyman, Bogle. It's as a culture or as a population, they bring their myths with them as they settle in a place. The vernacular changes.
And you could actually probably bring them right to the modern day with Boogeyman.
Originally, what we think of as boogeymen, came from, I think, late 1700s. It was when they started to explore the Pacific. There was a group of, might have been the 1800s. They were a group of just bloodthirsty island pirates, and that's where the bogies is what they were called, and I think that they were attributed with some of the same attributes as the mythological or the fae version, so they became the boogeymen. They were just oh God, I haven't seen that forever, but it's somewhere in the Ring of Fire. It was one of the Pacific islands, and these guys were just fearless as far as they would attack modern shipping. Guns didn't bother them. They'd swarm a ship, kill everybody, and take the heads for trophies and take whatever goods that they could recognize. Mm-hmm. But there really were at one time boogeymen.
Now, just to clarify too, because there's a lot of confusion. When people say fae is kind of like an umbrella term for all creatures that are within the fairy realm. Fairy is a specific kind of fae. And we'll get to that. Fairies are more or less, if your kids watch Tinkerbell, for example, Disney created Tinkerbell, obviously. But if you look at the stories of Tinkerbell and the fairies that she works with, that's pretty much how fairies are seen to work. They bring in the seasons. They bring in the blooming of the flowers. They bring in the change of the seasons. And, you got your winter fairies, you've got your spring fairies, you've got your harvest fairies. Fae relates to all the different kinds of fairies the fairies that you see within all these different classifications. I can't wait to hear what Ronald Murphy's got to say, because Ronald Murphy right now is tentatively coming to Paracon in September to actually do a class on fairies. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And for those that don't know who Ronald Murphy is, Spaced Out Radio, he's the crypto guru.
Yeah, he's our recurring guest.
Yeah, every first Tuesday?
Oh, let me look. Rob Murphy is the second Wednesday of each month.
Okay.
He comes on. We have Monday is like a free day. First Monday is to be decided, but the second Tuesday and the second Wednesday are Samantha Mowat and Rob Murphy.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, I don't have the schedule memorized.
I don't either. I haven't written down. I've been booking some guests lately, and I just happen to have it in front of me right now.
Good deal. All right, we got bogey. This is the generic name for some different types of goblins. Their temperament ranges from the spectrum from being benign to malevolent. Is a part of the Ensealy court. See goblin bogey. And, yeah, one of those you don't want to mess with. My words, not theirs. Bogles, they are a form of goblins, probably the same as what the shows of bogies. Generally nasty in temperament, however, they prefer to inflict their evil deeds upon liars and murderers. I see nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Generally evil-natured goblins, okay, we already covered that. I hate duplicates. Now we have Bakwas, a fearsome spirit in the great northwestern American spruce forests. Now here's what's funny, if you're in Forest Moon Paranormal, go in the library. I've got a lot of books from the 1800s and the 1900s of paranormal creatures that they actually saw in the lumber woods. Feel free to download them, read them. I always found, what they described in the 18 and 1900s. You got Babe Ruth and the blue ox. And, some of the creatures they describe in those books that's a show in itself. So the Bakwas is a fearsome spirit in the great northwestern American spruce forest. He's only seen in glimpses. These are those, when they describe glimpses, to me that's one of the big things of fairies, and spirits do the same thing. But the little flitters you see in the corner of your eye. Now, if you're prone to migraines, that can be a migraine. I won't discredit that. Or if you have, an eyelash in the corner of your eye and it's getting in the way. But if you have a definite movement in the corner of your eye, or if you see sparkles and it's not a migraine, those are usually pretty strong fairy signs. Like I said, spirits can do the same thing, but I usually attribute those to fairies. He's only seen in glimpses. Has been seen wearing totemic face paints. Hunters are very aware of this, or very aware of his presence. He likes to push fishermen off the banks to drown, taking the victim's soul to his home in the forest.
Kind of overlaps with Bigfoot, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Almost makes you wonder if some of the Bigfoot sightings, like the one where Dave had the pixelation, where the pixelated, not quite in the spectrum of sight, might not be the Bakwas instead of a Bigfoot.
Right. And Trippin's sitting here talking about hairless cats. You're talking about a sphinx. Sphinxes are actually quite rare, if I remember right. And yeah, ugly, but very revered in Egypt.
Very smart animal too.
Mm-hmm.
But they're alternative for people who are allergic to
the dander
fur.
Right.
And I don't think they produce dander. They're a weird hybrid, and they're very, very, very expensive.
Yeah. Well, they're rare.
And creepy looking.
Uh-huh. And now we have the bonacon. The bonacon is a beast with a head like a bull. but with horns that curl in towards each other. Because these horns are useless for defense, the bonacon is another weapon. When pursued, the beast expels its dung, which travels a great distance, as much as 2 acres, and burns anything it touches. Now we have the boobery, preys on ships transporting sheep and cattle, which are its favorite foods. It mimics the sound of a particular animal's young to lure it to the side of the ship, where it's captured in the long talons and dragged underwater. It also has the ability to shapeshift into the form of a horse and run on top of the water, complete with the sound effect of hooves on earth. These guys are known in Scotland. They are also known as the water horse and are black birds with large sharp claws. They cannot exist on land. Now we have brags. These are fairies from the Unseelie court, takes the form of what the victim most fears. We have Bridiag, works as a Celtic voodoo doll made up of straw. Brown Man of the Myers, he is a protector of wild animals. And as I said earlier, every fairy has its purpose. Some fairies are known for basically performing first aid or healing on injured wild animals. And then, of course, you got the ones that work with plants and bring in the seasons and that kind of thing. But we'll see the different kinds that we go through here. Brown men, short, thin male fairies who protect the animal life on Cornwall's Bodmin Moor. They don't appear to dislike humans, but they avoid them. I don't think I blame them. These guys are known as fire fairies. They are short, thin males, red hair. Not much is known about them because, well, they shun humans. Brownie. In Scottish Gaelic folklore, the brownie was a household elf who would make sure their home was tidy at night while the family was sleeping. Failing to reward the brownie for his service would result in either the brownie leaving the household or, at worst, mischievously causing havoc in the house, such as breaking the dishes, spoiling the milk, and chasing away cattle or other animals from the property. The brownie is comparable to the German kobold, which is pretty much have the same function as the brownie. They are very small dwarf fairies. They always appear as males, coal black eyes. They wear little suits of green, blue, or brown, and small caps made of felt. Their eyes are slightly pointed, and they have long, nimble fingers. They love to adopt humans and take care of them for the payment of a warm room and their favorite foods, which is milk, honey, ale, and cake. But don't feed them too much or try giving them gifts, or else they'll take offense and leave. Also, having a cat in your house will make them leave. They're about 4 foot tall, 4.5 inches tall. There we go. A bit smaller than pixies and trooping fairies. Now, trooping fairies are kind of cool because if you ever hear of the story in Ireland, if you look at the houses of Ireland, they have the front and the back door are facing, basically facing each other. Because if they didn't, the trooping fairies were known to come through the front door and walk right out the back. They walk right through the middle of the house. Those are actually that's known lore in Ireland. But if they didn't have the back door facing the front, then they'd make their own door, complete with little miniature horses and horse-drawn carriages. Trippin. He asks, how can we bribe a brownie to adopt us? If you don't want to bribe him, just ask him. You can actually attempt to communicate with a brownie through meditation. That's one way. And some people will just leave cakes and ale or honey and milk on their doorsteps. Of course, around here, they do that for Bigfoot as well. There's a lot of lore here up in the mountains. They actually do the same thing for Bigfoot. But yeah, if you want brownies to come to your home, invite them, ask them, meditate on it, and leave them kind of like a gifting you do with Bigfoot at the same time. But again, don't disrespect them or they'll break all your dishes. They are nocturnal. They don't come out during the day. And again, they basically do your chores for you. They can kind of see your soul, essentially, so they only pick a house with a nice and caring family in which to aid the woman of the house in her chores. Some believe the brownies have the ability to shapeshift into domestic farm animals, such as a rooster. They're earth fairies found in Scotland. I'm skimming here. First used in the 1510s, they're described as a wee brown man. Let's see. They're one of the nicer fairies you want around for damn sure. Size of a rodent. Some thought they were informants planted in the home of mortals. They live in the walls, possess big eyes, gave them the appearance of innocence, cute as a bug, annoying like ants.
I can see where they'd have an aversion to cats if they're like rodents.
Right. And well, the cats, I mean, think of it, you're 4.5 inches tall, and the cat's going to chase you around. and again, folks, if you're in the chat room, you have a question, if you don't put it in caps, I won't even see it. I mean, I'm watching, but I don't have time to read. So if you have a question, put it in caps, or Markham will catch it. See, the earliest reference to brownies was in English, came in 1513. I think it's probably a duplicate. Though the word will presumably be somewhat older. There have been some attempts to find a Celtic origin, but it's far more likely that brownie comes from being brown, the brown one. And they come in early Scottish ballads. Let's see. Yeah, and a brownie can become personally attached to one member of the family versus the whole family. Other creatures such as leprechaun, puka, and beanchy also comprise this group of the coelicourt. So now we have the buacaline, are small fairies who look like young men. And in fact, the name literally means little boys. They're excellent shapeshifters and will torment animals just for fun. Kind of like little boys, huh? They originated in Ireland and Scotland, also known as the herding boys. The bucaline's element is water. They wear pointed red hats, which may be inverted into flower caps. Let's see, they have mischievous natures that are almost mean. And like I said, they torment animals for fun. They're most active in the summer. They're found in pastures in summer. Contacts unadvised. What do you think? See, buggers. These are very adept at shapeshifting. They are considered very dangerous to humans. Fortunately for us, they never leave the astral world. That basically puts my team at risk, but my team is very adept at the astral, so I'm not too worried about it. But they do encounter a lot of strange stuff in the astral. They're air fairies. They're known in England. It's hard to know what they really look like because they shapeshift. And they're part of the coelicourt. When in true form, their eyes hold the essence of every shape they've ever taken. So, the Boogle, an advisor to the courts, a species of leprechaun. Googly cross eyes, big bulbous nose, mottled skin, dwarf-like in stature. Despite the rags and their ghastly appearance, this race is cultured and highly intelligent. Then you got Boogle Nas, a hideously ugly fairy, a fact he seems to find most distressing. He is said to be the last of his race and lives underground deep in the woodlands of Brittany. He yearns for human companionship and will call out a warning to humans before he appears, so as not to take them too much by surprise. He is an earth fairy. He lives underground deep in the woodlands. And let's see. He may be able to assist with spells of fertility and prosperity. That's good to know. As long as he can get past his look. He's also known as a shepherd. Now we've got buggers, or originated in England. The element is air. These fairies are very dangerous to humans, but they never leave the astral world. These ones are active all year. They're top type of a goblin. And I'm not sure if that's the same as the other one. I think it didn't it say the other one that was that hated humans was only active in summer? You still there, Markham? Okay, we're going for the Bukira. Bukira e Dut, a beautiful fairy among the ancient Albanians, who is also very helpful. The supreme god Timur is her lover. She is sometimes connected with the underworld and shows some demonical aspects. Her name means the beauty of the earth. Her sister is Bukira e Dietit. I think so, Don. Markham disappeared. And her name means the beauty of the sea. Now we have bug, bugbear, or bugaboo. Any imaginary thing that frightens a person, something that causes fear or distress out of proportion to its importance. Now we have the bunyip, lives in the swamps and marshes of Australia. So do any of our Australians out there heard of the bunyip? He looks like they look like plump humans, only smaller, standing at 4 foot tall. They are shy and rarely seen in any case, but are often heard. They bark like dogs to warn nearby humans of impending dangers. They are water fairies. They are found in the swamps of Australia. They are short and covered in mud. You call to them and announce your friendly intentions, and they can help you catch fish and also warn against intruders. Good, one you guys have heard of. Outstanding. Now we have the buttery sprites. No one has ever seen a buttery sprite, but their presence is known by missing food and by the havoc they wreak on those whom they believe cheat others or live the lives of hypocrites. They live in old abbeys and inns and take any food not marked by a cross, especially fresh churned. Fresh churned butter, that is. They originated in England. Their element is earth. And as I said, they've never been seen, but because they're only active at night, if they can be found, it would be in an old abbey or inn. It's a bogey from the Unseelie court. We'll get more of the Unseelie and Seelie courts here later. If not this show, it'll be next show. They have a small leathery body, laughs out loud, and inhabits basements owned by crooked business owners in the mortal world. Now we have the Bweganod, goblins who can shapeshift into other animal forms, including humanoids. Okay, tripping. S4. Originally, before Markham came on board, my show was part of the Area 51 Cafe. And that was with Fog Paranormal's SJ and Russ Wells. Between the three of us, yeah, exactly, Don. We ran Area 51 Cafe. Now, both of our vehicles broke at the same time, so we couldn't get together to do episodes, so they ran Darkness Radio, their show, and I switched my show over to S4 because it was a bunker in Area 51. And I only focused on UFOs and alien abduction. So that's where S4 came from. Then I switched over. We completely switched our shows, and I did S4 only. And Markham was my first guest for S4 having a guest, and we did RH Negative Factor. I pulled him on as my co-host, and we made it S4 squared. That's the story behind our name. So now we have, did I say Boiganod? Boiganod are goblins who can shapeshift into other animal forms, including humanoids, but no Boiganod has ever perfected his shapeshifting skills, and they are easily spotted if one looks closely. They do not look like humans. They don't like humans, but have never harmed them, just frighten and fool them. They originated in Wales. Their element is water. They are most active at dusk, and contact is not advised. Let's see. Now, I don't even know how to pronounce this one. There's Markham.
I don't know what the cats have cornered under the sink, but it's got their attention.
All right.
And apparently they were getting some of the stuff under the sink out of their way. That was what the bang was.
I didn't hear the bang.
Yeah, I did barely. It was like I'm down here at the far corner of the house in my studio, and I heard something. I didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have the Boo Box. Okay. I love it when they give you the pronunciation, because BWBACHS, I have no idea how to pronounce that one. Boo Box is a solitary house fairy who is very mischievous, but do not seem to wish any harm on the host family. However, they do not have the helpful nature of the brownie or the bean tie. The Boo Box originated in Wales, also known as Boo Acres or Cottagers. Their element is hearth. The Boo Box is mischievous. They are small, round, and wear large red hats and little loincloths. Ain't that nice of them? These are always seen as males. They are active all year. You look for these fairies in homes in fairyland, but it is not a good idea to invite them into your home. If you'd like to meet one, make a simple ritual and invite them into your circle. You may also want to use a bit of milk or cake for added inducement. These fae may possibly be able to help with home protection spells, but they're very untrustworthy. That's enough incentive for me not to invite them.
Yeah, they can stay outside.
So the Boobok is also known as a goblin from the unseelie court, clammy hand, small slimy body, waves its skinny arms while running away from horseshoes. Oh, really? Plays tricks, otherwise known as the Grinner. So we have the, oh God, they don't give me a they don't give me a pronunciation here. It's Baka. I'll just say Baka. BWCA. They are the Welsh version of the brownie. They have slightly nastier tempers and are prone to tantrums if their work is criticized. Oh God. They also despise tattletales and people with long noses. Oop, Pinocchio be sucking, wouldn't he?
I'm screwed.
So the buka is the Welsh name for a brownie. That's all. Let's see, I already did all that, and that covers that one. That's what happens when you have multiple sources that you're drawing from, and they all say the same damn thing. The Busiad. I have no idea how I'm butchering that name too. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, most fairies don't like horseshoes because, again, of the iron factor. Now, if you ever see it with pagan rituals where they're ringing a bell, the bell ringing is actually supposed to be one. It's got multiple uses. some rituals use the bell ringing to show a shift in the ritual, that you're changing quarters, you're changing moods, you're changing things like that. Sometimes, depending on what they're doing, it calls fairies. So ringing of bells is one of those fairy calling things. In a whole different topic of a class, we're going to go into like the herbs that fairies like, things like that too. Let's see, the Busiad. I don't think we got to the Busiad. It's more of a nuisance than a danger, but he can turn nasty if thwarted. He is solitary. He moves so fast it can barely be seen by the human eye. Originated in Wales. The Busiad is an element of fire. Let's see, Catherine's asking, do the fairies spill your drinks? I sure have issues with spilling drinks or spilt drinks. Well, that could be a spirit.
Probably could be.
Depends on what you're drinking. If you're drinking wine, it might be a fairy. But again, with any case, I have to look at a pattern. I have to look at a whole series of signs and symptoms before I just say, yep, fairies. It also depends on the energy. Say that again?
Try putting something or whatever. Try putting whatever, Catherine, whatever you're drinking, put a little bit in a shot glass or in a saucer, and see if that keeps your drinks from spilling.
Exactly, because that can actually appease. That can appease spirits as well as fairy. So I mean, whether it's a spirit or a fairy, just putting it in a shot glass could appease whatever's knocking your drink over. Let's see, the Busiad is more of a nuisance and danger, but he can turn nasty if thwarted. He is solitary, moves so fast he can barely be seen by the human eye. I know where he went through that one. The element is fire. He's solitary, moves so fast he can barely be seen by the human eye. If you meet a Busiad on the inner plane, try to get away as fast as possible and take care that he does not follow you home. That's with anything. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Our guys travel astral. That's what they're talking about by inner plane is astral travelers. But they usually, when they travel, they come here. My property is their meeting ground. They'll get the team here in the astral, and they'll travel to the client's location. Do what they have to do, whether it's removing a spirit, passing over a spirit, mediating, or going full combat with an entity. Whatever they got to do. Then they meet back here, make sure everyone's here, and go back home. My property is heavily shielded, so if they did bring something back here, it wouldn't get here anyway, but it keeps it from going to their house. That's one thing, whether you're walking physically into a paranormal location or traveling astrally, you don't want anything following you home. That's called an attachment. So the Busiad, in that case, is one that you don't want following you home. It's a fire fairy. He's slender with long pointy nose and purple eyes. He's a goblin that loves the warmth of a hearth fire, and once he has entered a home, you ain't getting rid of him. Alright, so now we're to the Kaliak. The Kaliak is the keeper of the stone of Fowl, sovereignty of the city Fallius. Affiliated with and the ruler of the Ancili court, staged a revolution against Queen Onog and brought winter to the Shi. Kaliak Buer, or Fuer. She is a one-of-a-kind old woman who walks by night carrying her walking stick. Her carry-on crow on her left shoulder, however, her reputation is dangerous and ill-tempered, may be a mistaken one. She's a water fairy, found in Scotland. She's also known as the Blue Hag. Okay, I've already read that part. She's associated with the crone goddesses. She is believed to dwell in a land that is always winter, and her power is greatest from Samhain to Ostara. Samhain, for those who don't know, is what we call Halloween. Ostara is what we call spring. Actually, it's what's known as Easter is what we call Ostara. If you want her around, you call on her as you would a goddess. This fairy may bring help with any type of magic and ritual. The Kate Sith is a large black fairy cat with green eyes that wanders the Scottish Highlands. Yeah, if you want to know about Ostara and Midsummer and all the pagan Sabbats that we refer to here, go back into the archives and you'll hear the pagan show where I talk about being a pagan paranormal group and basically the ins and outs of being pagan. I basically did that show as a supplement because of all the miscommunication and what people thought pagans were and were not. So now we have Cajun fairies. Cajun fairies are the feu follet in French, are an American legend that emerged from the bayou as early as the 1920s with a light, a ball of fire, that shot out into the sky, likely derived from the same natural phenomenon as the will-o'-the-wisp. The lights were known as fairies, spirits, and sometimes the ghosts of loved ones. The caladrius. The caladrius is an all-white bird that lives in the king's house. If it looks into the face of a sick man, it means that he will live. But if the caladrius looks away, the sick man will die of his illness. To cure the sick man, the caladrius looks at him, and drawing the sickness into itself, the bird flies up towards the sun, where the disease is burned up and destroyed. The caladrius is an unclean bird which must not be eaten. The Calicant Zeroi. There are trooping fairies who are small, skinny, and always ride nude. Instead of riding horses, they ride chickens. That's what's wrong with my chickens. They're also all either partially or totally blind and are often accompanied on their raids by other crippled fairies. So, they're earth fairies. They're found in Greece, Albania, and Italy. We have Italian listeners, as a matter of fact. I was looking at our stats recently. We have some of you out there listening to us from the Philippines and Italy and Mexico, and I thank you. It's always encouraging getting an international following. Okay, so they ride chickens and they celebrate at Yule. Yule time, for those that don't know, it's December 21st. It's the rebirth of the sun gods. Canard Naz is the Breton version of the Banshee. If you haven't heard what the Banshee is, go back and listen to last week's show. So we have cats, guardians of the mortal world, pets of wizards and witches. Yeah, they are. Fairies don't trust them for good reason. The cat she. Fairy cat that changes shapes, once belonged to the Norn before stolen by the otherworldly, who then added insult to injury by also confiscating their spindle. Catoblepus. The catoblepus is a four-legged bull-like creature with a very large and heavy head. Because of the weight of its head, it can only look down. Catoblepus is Greek for that which looks downward. It has a long mane and that hangs over its eyes, which are red and bloodshot. If the beast were to ever look up, it would be deadly, because anyone who looks into its eyes will die immediately. It also has a foul and dangerous breath from eating poisonous plants. The centaur. I didn't even get a whole lot of information about the centaur because, well, I have books and books and books I could go through about a lot of these animals. The centaur has the lower body of a horse and the upper body of a human. That's all I have. I love the centaurs in Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah. Well, also,
Well, in Harry Potter too, actually, I think.
yeah, Harry Potter had one, had some. Actually, the tutor of Hercules was a centaur named Chiron.
Okay, that's right. That's right. We're gonna do. I mean, fairies are one thing. We're gonna do mythical creatures though. A completely different series of shows, I believe. Probably in May, because we're up to May right now. And it's going to take more than 3 episodes to cover all the fairies alone. So we've got, let's see, I had to walk over and get some more coffee. So after centaur, we've got the cerastes. The cerastes is the most flexible of all serpents, so flexible that it seems to have no spine. It has either 2 horns, which are like a ram's horns, or 4 pairs of small horns. The cerastes hides in the sand so that only its horns show. Animals thinking the horns are food come close and are killed by the serpent. Is there a truth fairy? Not that I'm aware of, Ronald. Haven't heard of one yet. And I mean, I've got, I don't just use the internet for research. I have books. I have people that I go to that actually work with fairies. And an actual truth fairy, no, I've never heard of one. Could that be a trait of one? Yes. An actual race of one? No. Not that I'm aware. So now we have the Chenequis, our small elf or pixie-like beings in the south to southeast of Mexico, especially Veracruz and parts of Oaxaca, from the Nahuatl Ohuacan Chenek, meaning those who dwell in dangerous places. They seem to have originally been guardian spirits of craggy mountains, woods, springs, caves, etc. Today they are usually described as having the appearance of a toddler, with the wrinkled face of a very old person. They are known for hiding things, getting people lost, and sometimes throwing stones at people. Changeling. Okay, according to folklore, a fairy would secretly exchange a mortal infant with that of the fairy kind. The fairy baby was called a changeling. Sometimes the stolen babies were returned to the families, especially when a person can expose the true nature of the changeling. The changeling existed in all folklore and fairy tales. In Scottish Gaelic tradition, the changeling was called Tacaran, or Umaid. In Irish folklore, it was Corpin She, Slodbrod. Yeah, it's not right. Or Slafra. And in Minx, I'm not going to try that one. The Welsh called them Plentin a Nidawin, Aral. So usually the fairy babies were sickly. One way to recognize them is to place them on a fire and chant a formula. If it is a changeling, it would leave, climbing up the chimney. Yeah, I wouldn't try that with a baby because, well, your CPS might get called. So far in Celtic mythology, I have come across mortal babies being stolen by fairies but not replaced with fairy infants. Changeling, an ugly fairy child put in the place of a kidnapped human child. Let's see. 23% mortality rate.
Wow.
Cheese spirits. Now, let's discuss this for a second. So, oh God, on a scientific level, what have they ever said was SIDS? Markham? Oh, Markham. Where did Markham go?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. So we're talking changelings. Did they ever come up with a scientific explanation for SIDS?
Well, a lot of times the children that die of sudden infant death syndrome were sleeping on their stomachs, and they think that the hypothalamus isn't developed enough to fight against like the restriction of breathing. So it's just a matter of, they quit breathing and die.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly you're supposed to leave infants on their backs, and that seems to cut the incidence of sudden infant death quite a bit.
Okay. Because what if...
It's like a form of sleep apnea.
I got you. Because what if you took changelings and compared the 23% mortality rate to sudden infant death syndrome with some of them?
Well, that might have been a way to explain, back before we knew there was a thing called sudden infant death, maybe that was just a folk way of making the parents feel better, saying, well, it was probably just a changeling.
The fairies trick your baby? That could be.
Yeah.
That's always possible. All right, so now we got chi spirits, or chai spirits. No one has ever seen a chai spirit, as they are pure energy and have no physical confines. Like brownies, the chai spirits adopt a human home in which to live. Chai spirits are air fairies from China. They are pure energy. The Chinese believe that the free movement of these fairies improves health and protection of the home. Furniture can be moved to improve the chai flow, and mirrors are placed over walls to act as portals, allowing energy to flow. Just don't ever have a mirror.
Feng shui.
Yep, exactly. Just don't ever have a mirror facing a mirror. So now we have...
Makes me want to try it.
No, don't do it. It opens the doorway. So now we have Chin Chin Kobakama. Appears to be elderly, but amazingly spry. They're either male or female, and are generally friendly towards humans, but could be a nuisance. They move into human homes and will bless and protect them as long as they are kept clean. They are earthly fairies. They're found in Japan. They resemble elves. The churn milk peg and melch dick. Small dwarf fairies who wear peasant costumes dating back to sometime around the 15th century. They jealously guard nut crops and hate lazy humans. Who doesn't? Although they are quite lazy themselves. So, they originated in England. They're also known as the acorn lady and the melch dick. Their element is earth. Peg is a female and dick is a male. Dick and Jane.
Mm-hmm.
They have capricious natures. They're most active in spring through autumn. And as I said a minute ago, they love nuts and they'll guard nut trees and orchards. Maybe a good one to call in for the orchard.
Yeah.
To contact them, you make an invitation to your circle. If you really want them around, offer nuts and milk as an inducement. Now we have cinema log. Say again?
Is there anything that mentions how to keep? I mean, once you get these things in, is there like a maintenance or something you have to do to keep them happy?
Actually, we'll get to that in another show. But I will say, usually, as long as you're keeping them happy, if you're respecting them, and you're giving them cakes, and they love milk and honey, and cakes. Kind of like gifting. Gifting for Bigfoot. It'd be the same thing as gifting for fairies. You set up a spot, or you set up an altar, and you put, cakes and honey on your altar. That's where they go for their gifting site. So it'd be the same thing. To get them out, Don, they can't be around iron. They can't be around. You would do the same thing as removing a spirit with a faerie. If you have a cat, they won't be around. If you have horseshoes, they won't be around. Any kind of iron, they won't be around. But yeah, it also depends on the race. But the most common is using iron. And as I said earlier, to shut down a faerie ring, you place an iron nail through the middle of the faerie ring and they can't use it anymore. But if they're doing good, if they're taking care of your crops and they're protecting your property, you want them around. So Cynomologus. Cynomologus is a bird that lives in Arabia. It builds its nest among the fruit of the cinnamon tree, which men value greatly. The men who want to cinnamon cannot climb the tree to reach the nest because the nest is too high and the tree branches are delicate, so they throw lead balls to knock down the cinnamon. Cinnamon obtained from the nest for this bird is the most valuable of all. Cleodona, the Irish goddess of beauty. She later became a fairy queen in the area of Carraig. Cleodona is County Cork. Clericons, a solitary fairy who resembles his cousin, the leprechaun. He is the self-appointed guardian of a wine cellar, one he chooses in his own time, and then moves in, makes himself a home. He is almost always drunk, but will prevent casks from leaking and wines from going bad, and he will chase away all those who come to take a drink uninvited by the master of the house. He originated in Ireland.
Where else?
But are similar fairies called Moniello in Italy. So there you go. You have Italian versions too called Moniello, which that makes sense because, again, the wine cellars. The Clericon are also known as his nibs, and its element is earth. The Clericon is a solitary fairy. No sightings of females have ever been recorded. Is very well groomed, well dressed. Generally has a cheerful disposition, but of course he's drunk. Why wouldn't he have a cheerful disposition? But he can be rather.
He was anybody who read the Sandman books by Neil Gaiman, the Sandman, I'll call them comic books, graphic novels.
Right.
The Clericon was a very constant and sort of a dick.
Right.
He was a dab of a troublemaker.
And that's probably where they got him from. So these guys are active all year round. If you ignore or mistreat him, he will spoil your wine stock. But if treated with hospitality, he'll prevent casks from leaking and wine going bad and chase away the uninvited. If you chase away a Clericon by insensitivity or lack of hospitality, no other will ever come to take his place. So if it's your wish to attract a Clericon, you leave a bit of wine out for him or design a ritual to invite him in. You must have a collection of wine in your basement or cellar for him to be interested in staying. He can aid in your home protection against thieves and vandals, and, of course, guard your wine.
Sounds cheaper than ADT.
Right. Let's see. For amusement, they tend to ride small animals, including cats and dogs, around your house or apartment, as if they're horses. Pets don't like this much after a while. So, in some parts of Ireland, the traditions clearly state that Clericons and leprechauns are the same beings, and there certainly seems to be plenty of them, although this belief and a fear of humans makes them harder to find in recent years. The Coblin is a Welsh mine goblin, cousins to the Cornish knockers. These creatures using mining tools are seen working industrially at the seam faces. The knocking of their picks and hammers is lucky, a sign of heavy ore content. Core power. One of the three powers that the Fae possess. Like skin color to a mortal, this power is generic. Examples include shapeshifting, royal blood, etc. This power is inherited at birth and stays with the faerie until its death. Crowns can only be worn by a sovereign or keeper, also known as circlet or tiara. Holds powerful magic. Counter spells. Fae use it only in extreme cases when a malevolent faerie casts a curse, spell, or enchantment on its intended victim. Must rhyme. Possibility of unintended consequence. Crystals. Magic insulators. Fairy powers, spells, curses, and fairies can be held in hollowed-out crystal vials so as not to harm the user and to safely store the magic. That's common. You can put spirits in crystals as well, and then you bury them. Crystal Lake, the lake between Findius and Phalius on the edge of the Black Forest. Marrows swim the swampy, soupy depths, full of seaweed. All fairy kind agree, not a fitting name. Kuksui. Yeah, I got that right. Kukui has almost become a generic term for monster among Mexicans and American Hispanics. He has taken on a popular image similar to that of a steering zombie or a ghoul. There are earth fairies, found in northern Mexico, that are large, drooling monsters. They'll try to harm anyone they meet, so it's best to avoid them. They delight in and gain power through the fear of their victims. Don't they all? I mean, that's common with the spirits, too. Stomps loudly through the house to scare the inhabitants. Travels through the walls. Its huge form creates hulking bubbles in the ceiling. And see, these are things you want to look for when you're doing a paranormal investigation. Kuamil, fairy noble from the Seelie Court, known for its distrust of mortals, has the ability to skin fae and mortals alive with a touch of its sticky fingers. They then wear the skin of their victims. See also Skinwalker. And see, it's kind of cool because you look at all the legends and lore of the different. I mean, same with the alien races we went over, and now the fairy races. You look at the paranormal as a big puzzle, and you look at the different legends and the different lores throughout culture and society, and you can see where a lot of it came from. So we have the Cup of Dagda. Cup of emerald hue. Spills o'er and heals undying youth, one of the four treasures protected by a keeper in the city of Nereus in the west, ruled over by a sovereign, stolen by the otherworldly. And thank you for joining us, Catherine. And I'm glad your depression went away. The cursed. Mortals who have been cursed by the Fae so as to give them disabilities or special powers, also known as the cursed. Cyclops, a giant from the Unseelie Courts, possesses only one eye that shoots flames at its victims. It may or may not have possessed an eye at an earlier time. Now we have the Kiri. Oh, good God. Kurui Pier. There we go. A powerful South American spirit who owns the jungle and tortures tortoise hunters, since the tortoises are his friends. The Dagda, king of the fairy race of the Tuatha De Danann in Irish mythology. He was celebrated not only for his prowess with a battle club, magic harp, and cauldron, but he's also known for his greed and cruelty. So, dancing. Fairies can dance forever. When a mortal is caught in the arms of a fairy in a dance, it is possible for the fairy to dance the mortal to death. Speed times up, and mortals starve to death. Some fairy races, like Vilas, are more prone to in their abuse of this power. The Deoine myth, also known as the good people. There's a question as to whether they're angels or fairies, since they are present at the biblical fall, but did not fall. It's generally assumed that they are awaiting salvation. They are fairies of contemporary Irish folklore. They're similar to the gentry. They were said to be next to heaven at the fall, but did not fall. And now we have the Deoine She. This is the name assumed by the Tuatha De Danann when the Milesians drove them underground. Now, if you there's a lot of legend and a lot of stories with the Fae. In that, between the Seelie and the Unseelie courts, there was a war. Yeah, no, I'm getting an RSO update. There's an epidemic hazard going on in the Canadian province of Ontario. I can't open it up without messing with the studio, though. I've been watching that all day. There's also an epidemic going on in a measles epidemic going on in California.
I guess there's I've always been kind of waiting for this since you had that backlash against vaccinating your kids in California. I've been waiting for some of the eradicated diseases to make a recurrence. Right.
Yeah, there's only like 20 people affected right now in California. It's one county that's in quarantine, according to RSO. Now, RSO is also a government site, so you never know. I haven't seen it hit the news, so. Let's see. So, yeah, the Deoine She, this is the name assumed by the Tuatha De Danann when the Milesians drove them underground. Their king is Finvara, who to this day holds court in his palace beneath the fairy hill of Nakma. They are skilled chess players, and no human has ever beaten Finvara in a game. Finvara is a womanizer, frequently kidnapping human women. The Deoine She are also quite fond of hurling, an odd cross between hockey and lacrosse. Divas. And no, Don, we do vaccinate. We just haven't vaccinated for the flu. But no, our kids are vaccinated. And we are vaccinated. We just don't do the flu vaccination. Divas.
I have to, because if I don't, I lose my job. But I bitch and complain every time I have to take it.
Exactly. Well, that's how the Army was, too. When in the Army, we were forced to do flu. Divas, they are most often seen not as a body, but as a faint golden glow clinging to healthy, well-cared-for plants. It is thought that they often guide medical researchers who look for beneficial medical properties in plants. If a plant is neglected, the diva will abandon it. They are a type of fairy originating in Persia and Greece. These are the small fairies that appear as bright orbs of light that are in nature and one with nature, Mother Nature. Said to live in the woods and in conjunction with the natural vibrations around them. See, I already said they're elemental nature spirits found in Greece, Persia, Isle of Man, and England.
I wonder if these things travel by belief.
Well, that would kind of go along with the. It would kind of go along with the line of thought form. I mean, the more people believe in something, the more it comes into existence.
Where in America we've had so many, it's basically even the native peoples emigrated from Asia Minor, across the Bering Land Bridge.
Right.
So you got to wonder how much of this supernatural beings were brought with a migrating population. The Irish probably brought their beliefs with them.
Mm-hmm.
No, my people had their own weird paranormal stuff in their tradition. So I just wonder, it looked like if there was nothing here already and all these different races converged on the North American continent, it makes you wonder, was it just a good fertile land for all of them to grow in?
Right. Now, devas are also collective hive beings via their connection to source, and thus each other. The bluebell diva is connected to all the other bluebell divas and the overarching bluebell diva of which it is part. And it draws its energy in an energetic pattern and vibration from these also. Its lifespan being connected to the individual bluebell, but not limited to it, as it returns to the collective of the overarching bluebell diva when its flower has died. If that makes sense. Let's see. Larger collective still of these spirit beings becomes gods and goddesses, such as the Welsh goddess Blodeuwedd, the maiden of flowers, or the green man, or the goat-footed god Pan, who are considered the supreme gods of nature. In some people's vision, there are many Pans, which are both large collective hive spirits, as well as part of the great Pan himself. This micro and macrocosm of spirit goes on endlessly from within the atom to the point of universal-sized spirit beings and beyond. So, dimples. Dimples are fairy marks on a mortal's cheeks where a fairy kissed it. Now we have Dinescentius, dwarf fairies in the service of the Irish goddess Ein, who is both a cattle goddess and a goddess who protects women. They have been said to shapeshift into any form to help average women harmed by men. They also guard cattle. So they originated in Ireland. Their element is fire. Let's see. They are found in pastures or at shrines to Eanine, which are found in her home county, Kilkenny. To contract them, you may want to try a ritual invocation at your circle or during spells for the protection of women. Let's see, the Disir, D-I-S-I-R. I'm probably saying that wrong. These are spirits who attract themselves to a particular place, usually man-made, like houses. Especially old houses. They are generally feminine ancestral spirits. Adobe. Adobe is a household sprite. First seen in 1811 from playful use of the proper name represented in Dobbin, the name of a farm horse and merchant of Venice. In Sussex, England, such apparitions were called master daubs. I hear Dobie, I think of Harry Potter.
Yeah, she borrowed when J.K. Rowling was writing her books and coming up with her mythology, she borrowed very heavily from, whatever traditions were available to her, the Scottish and the English,
right,
and the Welsh traditions. Dobby was a house elf.
He was. And
which is very close to what...
Sounds very accurate. So now we have Doitian Itil, firefly-sized fairies who sing lullabies to children to lull them to sleep. See also Silkies.
Silkies has got a bad connotation to it. I think Silkies the ones that lure you to the water and then drown you, kind of like sirens.
I believe that was Selkies. We'll see when we get there.
Silkies?
Yeah. We'll see when we get there.
Look that one up.
So we have Domvoy. Domvoys are creatures from the Unseelie Court that burns down houses. Only salt gets rid of them because they're a tad OCD. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Domavir. Male elves who, like their cousins the brownies, live in human homes which they protect with fierce loyalty. They have jealous natures and are especially watchful of poultry meats, which are their favorite foods. They are also earth fairies found in Russia. Now we have Dones Diageu. They are which means maids of the water, are typical beings of Cataluna, and they appear in many myths. They live in any place where they can find clean water, wells, springs, fountains, lakes, but they can also be found in woods and caves. They appear as women of incredible beauty, although half of their body can be a fish or bird-like, as for many other fairies of Spanish folklore and Indo-European. They often guard wonderful treasures. They're always good and kind to humans. So now we have Donis de Ayagawa. I'm not sure if this is the same or not. These are winged fae, guards from the east in the city of Gorius. Yes, they are. Part bird, part women, sent to guard Radis in the tower after she betrayed her people. Now we have Doppelganger. I don't see doppelgangers as fairy, but some of these folklores see doppelganger in part of the fairy realm, and I have a hard time with that. But a doppelganger, according to them, is a fairy creature who takes on the face and build of their victim in order to scare, take advantage of, or otherwise steal their worldly assets. Commonly experienced as an identity crisis. What do you think about that one?
Well, I can put that in that realm. Yeah, I can see doppelganger because it's also used as it's used in that connotation in paranormal as well.
Right.
But it's also, they say everybody has a double.
Mm-hmm.
And they call that, generically a doppelganger. But I think that with the more supernatural bent, I would put them in the fae as somebody who would take over, kind of like to me, it's more like a skinwalker changeling in the Native American sense.
Right. I kind of see that going that way. So now we have Dormet. Is a miniature French-made fairy wearing a blue dress. Gives children pleasant dreams. Now it's going to get interesting. Dracs. In their natural state, dracs appear as great floating purple blobs in the surface of the water. They can also be seen in the form of a golden chalice, or in a female human form. They are always on the lookout for human males to take in as mates. They appear as beautiful women to lure them in. They also appear as a golden chalice on the surface of the water. When the men reach down unsuspectingly to grab the prize, they are dragged under the Drac Kingdom. They originated in France, and they are similar to the German, the Nix. They are known as Draca in England, where they are less well known. Their element is obviously water. In their natural state, purple blobs. They're dangerous to approach and are active all year long. They're not bound to live in the water, but they prefer it there. Sometimes they may be found in damp, mossy caves and rocky outcroppings near bodies of water. Many are seen in the English Channel. But their original home was the Seine River. which have been their kingdom.
How much of the ill will and sort of vengeful spirit of these things is just because they got displaced?
That's a good question, and it's probably a good possibility with some of them. I wouldn't say all of them, because there are just evil fairies. Or evil fae, I'll say, not fairies, because fairies overall are good. Different races within the fae are bad, obviously. Drakes. Drakes have never been seen by the human eye, but have been smelled. They're benevolent house spirits who will bless your hearth and multiply and keep your firewood dry in exchange for living in your home. If they are not welcome, they will just leave. And not one of them has been known to react negatively to human mistreatment. They originated in England. Their element is fire.
Well, that's also, Drake is also an old phrase for a dragon too.
Right.
Like a water drake, fire drake.
Let's see, they're most active from nightfall until just past dawn.
Which is when most people would have had their fire banked for the night.
Right. Now, they do not smell pleasant. Their odor has been described as a cross between rotten eggs and a dirty chicken coop. Well, that's what, drakes are also male ducks. That's what they would smell like. They're found in wood piles, at hearthsides, and deep in the woods with old trees, and prefer rural areas. To contact them, invite them to your hearth. Leave food and provide warmth to keep them. If you have no fireplace in your home, then provide one in your astral home. Besides providing you with dry firewood, a drake can lend energy to any spell done in the fireplace. They are fire fairies. Ugh. Dragons we're not going to get into, because dragons is a whole other category, of which we'll...
That's the show pretty much into itself.
It could be, yeah. So I'm not going to mess with dragons on this particular show. We'll cover them when we do mythological creatures. I could actually have a speaker come and talk about dragons. I'm friends with, for those that are familiar with her, I'm friends with DJ Conway, the author who wrote Dragon Magic. And she'd be a good speaker to talk about dragons. If I can ever get a hold of her. She's like in her 70s.
Oh, Lord. They're trying to get a hold of Ursula Le Guin or something.
Now, I've got her phone number somewhere. I just got to find her. Dullahan is the headless phantom coachman who drove a black coach known as Coach a Bower, sometimes drawn by headless horses. In the coach, there is a coffin. Thomas Crofton Croker called it the death cart. The Dullahan were usually accompanied by the banshee, wailing as if in a funeral. Sometimes this banshee is also headless. In other traditions, the Dullahan doesn't ride in a coach, but rides a headless horse. If a person opened a door when he or she hears a coach rumbling by, that person may have a pitcher full of blood thrown into their face. The person is therefore marked for death. It seems that Dullahan can take off or put on his head at will. The Dullahan may even toss his head around like in a gruesome ball game. Those who watch him pass may lose their eye to his whip. According to Yeats, the cracking of whip is the omen of death. There are antecedent to headless phantom or person scattered throughout the older Celtic literature. The best known was Curoy, a king of Munster, who was involved in a beheading game with 3 of Ulster's champions in the tale of Fled Brickrin. A similar beheading tale is found in Middle English poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yep.
So now we have Duenades. Huh?
Yeah, every time Gawain would swing at his neck to kill, the giant would just pick his head off. The Green Knight would pull his head up, and it wouldn't be able to cut.
Duenades are bogies from the unseelie courts, live in the walls and make bumps in the night. All right, dwarves. Dwarves are short, usually bearded, and appear to be very old. Their aged appearance seems to be caused by the fact that they reach maturity at the age of 3. You know, when I was a kid, I had a book of dwarves. They exist mainly in the mines of Germany and in the mountains of Scandinavia. They are sensitive about showing their feet, since they're usually deformed in some way. If you're curious about their feet, the only way to get an idea is to put flour, ash, or something of that sort in their path and look at the footprints left. Dwarves can't be above ground during the day since sunlight turns them into stone. Some people say that they exist as toads during the day and assume their usual dwarfish form at night. The dwarf is another explanation, is also considered a diminutive being that gave up their fairy nature for the ability to craft iron. They're also known in the Isle of Rügen, the Swiss mountains. Let's see. They work with precious metals to work into arms and armor and other artifacts which are often endowed with magic. Now we have the Dybbuk, are evil Jewish spirits whose sole purpose is invading bodies of humans to cause them to do evil or make mischief. They're dangerous to astral entities found in Israel. They're more like demons because of their power to possess the human body. Music is effective in driving these beings away.
Yeah, to a point. Though that's one of those things. A Dybbuk is something you do not want to mess with at all.
It sounds like kind of the equivalent of a djinn, isn't it? Sounds similar.
Very much more malevolent, where a djinn can go either way.
Right.
A Dybbuk is there's no good side of a Dybbuk. Mm-hmm. You know that, and if you are tempted to screw around and buy a Dybbuk box, one of the many Dybbuk boxes that are actually for sale on eBay,
right?
Do not do it. Do not do it. You just really don't want to take a chance. You're messing with Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, and you know that's just something you don't want to screw with.
Right.
It's that those people, those traditions have been around a long time, and they have some. You just don't want to screw around with it.
No, agreed. You don't want to screw with anything you're not familiar with or unfamiliar with anyway. Common sense anyway.
Well, it's just become a fad lately to buy haunted artifacts on eBay. And there are several. No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
I know better. I have enough trouble keeping my house and my soul clean without pulling crap like that in.
Right.
But it's been like legend tripping, where people want to go through the haunted highway type of thing. There's been a trend lately where people have been buying haunted dolls, haunted artifacts, and Dybbuk boxes off of eBay. And, maybe, it's just a joke. And maybe it's not. And if you actually get a real Dybbuk box and screw with it, you're going to wish you hadn't.
or then you have then you have the doll Annabelle and haunted dolls and whatnot. No, I don't get it. I really don't. Why do you even mess with it? Because then we get called in and clean up your mess. And
Right.
No, happens all the time.
People dabble, think they don't understand, and then when it reaches out and bites them in the ass, they're, oops, gee, there was something to this.
And that's one of my first questions with a case is, have you been conjuring? Have you been, why?
Well, even the fact that you study something can, attract you to it, or attract it to you.
It'll attract it to you. Names are power. So even just studying like demonology and saying the wrong name can bring in an entity. Maybe not that particular entity, but any malevolent entity can be drawn in by names.
Right.
So now we have the Dwerger, or Dwergu, or Gotho-German dwarves dwelling in rocks and hills. Each Uasaj, or Ek Ushkis, they are similar to the Kelpie, but much more dangerous. They inhabit lochs and seas. Huh?
Ekuskia.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Some of these names, I don't know. They inhabit lochs and seas. They will tear their victims into pieces and eat them, leaving the liver behind. If they're ridden inland, they're safe to ride. But if they catch the lightest whiff of the sea air, they're trouble.
Yeah, I think I'll just settle for walking.
Exactly. Echinacea, or echinase. The echinase is a fish, half a foot in length, that clings to ships and delays their passage. When this fish is attached to a ship, even in the high winds of a storm, the ship will not move, but seems to be rooted to the sea. It's found in the Indian Ocean. Oh, God, I hated the Indian Ocean. I hated that.
So did I.
Oh, my God. I had to take a tugboat. We're in Somalia. My captain came over and said, "Hey, Coop, I need you to pull one of your medics to go to this ocean freighter." And we got an injured American contractor on this boat. I go, "Okay, I'll go. That's fine." And he said, "Grab your aid bag, and you're going to be taking a tugboat across the Indian Ocean 2 hours out to this freighter." I didn't know what I was looking forward to. Oh my God! I'm on the Indian Ocean in a little rinky-dink tugboat, and you know how big those freighters are. The Indian Ocean, for those that ain't familiar, I think it's always rough. And
it seemed like it was.
That
was we operated in the IO as well. We called it Bagel Station, where we just did this huge circle out in the Indian Ocean waiting for trouble.
Yeah. And if you can picture the size difference between an ocean freighter and a tugboat.
Yeah.
These guys dropped a rope ladder that only reached halfway down the side of this freighter, with the concept that I'm supposed to wait until the wave brings up the tugboat level with this rope ladder, snatch it up, and haul ass. Well, the water was so rough, they were just about to, we kept hitting the side of this boat. And, finally, I looked up and I saw that this rope ladder was coming parallel with me. So I took my chance, and I grabbed the rope ladder. I'm starting to run up this rope ladder. I look down, and the tugboat is still coming up. So it's almost parallel with my legs. Like, oh, hell no. And I just started hauling ass because I just knew I was about to get crushed between this tugboat and this freighter. And then I felt these arms snatch me up by the bag that I had on my back, and they pulled me over to the side. So, yeah, Indian Ocean. No.
Similar happened to me. We were anchored off the coast of Naples, Italy, because the Nimitz couldn't come into port because it was a nuke. So we had to take Liberty boats back and forth. And in my case, I discovered that they had us. We were at the NATO base outside of Naples.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe at the time a bottle of Asti Spumante was $2 American, if that. And I drank $20-$30 worth of Asti Spumante, so I wasn't feeling particularly good.
Right.
I was, I could almost have flown out. And then I got hungry and I bought a donut from a street vendor, which was a mistake because, whatever. Anyhow, they didn't mix along, and it was kind of rough seas going back out to the Nimitz. And we had this large metal flotation thing out. We called it the Camel. The Liberty boat pulled up to the Camel, and then you jumped up from the Liberty boat onto the Camel, and then the ladder, a steel ladder, was on. It had pivot points, so as the Camel rose and fell, it was easier to get on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I chose the time we were about to pull up to the Camel to get rid of my Asti Spumante and my donut, and somebody grabbed my collar, jerked my head up, just as the Liberty boat hammered into the Camel.
Oh, hell.
Had it not been for whoever that was, I would not be talking here.
Mm-mm.
My head would have been a greasy spot, like a grape.
Right.
And I know I was drunk, but to be honest, I turned around, saw the guy, didn't know him, and never saw him again. And even on something like the Nimitz, you got to where you saw faces and were familiar with faces.
Well, they have
and I've always been.
You have 2,000 people working there, don't you?
Well, 2,000 ships company, 2,000 to 3,000. When the air wing is on board, you have roughly 6,100 in that area.
Okay. So yeah, the chance of you seeing the same person is slim to none.
Well, no, because you have nowhere to go.
True.
And in my job, I was all over the place. So, I went. One of my escorts in Flag Intel was Brett Walker, who is now serving a life sentence for espionage, who was sailor of the quarter when I came on board. Yeah, this is the guy they got watching me to make sure I don't steal any secrets. Is one of the members of the Walker family spy circle.
So you had
but anyhow.
So you had a plethora of people.
Yes, a plethora of people. Great show.
Yep.
But I just thought I would run into that guy again, and I never did. I looked for that man because I would have recognized him if I had. Because basically he saved my life and then just sort of disappeared.
Right. Okay, we're going to carry on here. Now we've got the Earthmen. Are gnomes and fairies of the mines. They are a solemn race, but they can laugh and dance most merrily. And we got so many fairies. We're going over time tonight. We got the Eckamu, one of the evil spirits of the ancient Assyrians. The Eckamu appeared wailing and crying outside a home to signal an impending death. Now, this sounds, it even says much like a banshee or a banshee. Yeah, so you have a banshee similar being in most cultures, it looks like. The Eckamu would be the Assyrian version of the banshee. Now we're going to talk about elementals. Elementals are actually my favorite beings, I think, along with the earth fairies. Because living in the mountains, I love the earth fairies anyway. Not to mention the ones that the fairies that help with the harvest and the crops are my favorites. But the elementals, and I know most of you listening that are part of Spaced Out Radio from that crew have seen my pictures of the elementals leaving. But the elementals are spirits whose nature and energetic pattern are either solely or largely of one of the four elements, earth, air, fire, or water. All things being in part made of the fifth element, which is spirit. So some are considered to be of one element, as well as spirit, and can be thought of as having the most simple energetic vibrations. It is this type that is often called upon or created in a ritual, especially so-called high magic. More complex elementals are connected mostly with one of the elements, but can have one or more of the others also. Meaning you can have an elemental that is part fire or part water. For example, storm elementals can comprise of a combination of air and water, as well as perhaps fire as lightning. A collective or hive of storm elementals combine to make a greater storm elemental. A large collective, again, is sometimes considered to be a titan, the most ancient and vast elemental beings.
Hey, Coop.
Yeah,
I think
see.
whenever the cat. Okay, I'll be right back. I gotta see what the heck is going on up there.
The cat's got it. So the Earth Titans, for example, are responsible for and oversee earthquakes, plate shifts, and the gradual movements of continents. The Elibins, small inland lake fairies, who transport themselves by riding on eggshells, originating in Cornwall in Wales, and their element is water. They're small inland lake fae who transport themselves by riding on eggshells. They're active all year, particularly in the spring. These fairies are guardians of the domain of the Lady of the Lake from Arthurian myth. They live at the bottom of Dosmary Pool, a lake in Cornwall. They're shielded by the illusion of water. They can help spiritual seekers contact the goddess. Elion is also the name given to the Welsh elves. They're tiny and diaphanous fairies whose food is toadstools and fairy butter, a fungoid substance found in the roots of old trees and in limestone crevices. Their queen is Mab. So we already covered elves. No, we covered dwarves. Hold on. We're going to go back. We're going to backtrack and talk about elves. The elf, or Alf, was derived from Teutonic origin. Description of the elves varied from author to author and from one period to another. The elves were introduced into the Celtic folklore and later tradition. According to Norse myth, there are two groups or tribes of elves. The light elves, known as Jasalfr, lived in the world called Alfheim, which the Vanir god Freyr ruled. The light elves were seen as fair. The other group of elves were the dark elves, or Dokalfr, living in Nidavellir, or black elves, Svartalfr, living in the world called Vartalfheim. There seemed to be a difference between dark elves and black elves. The dark elves were described with complexion black the night, and they were short like the dwarves. The dark elves, like the dwarves, were known for their invention and craftsmanship. To the Norse tradition, the elves were spirits, or minor deities of the woodland or household. In the Norse mythology section, in later Germanic folklore, the elves had changed, becoming diminutive in size, like the Celtic counterpart of the fairies. It was this tradition, as household spirits, that the elves were later given in Germanic and Celtic folklore. The closest thing that the Celtic people had to the elves were the Elil from Welsh tradition. They were short or tiny, can be seen as benevolent if pleased, so they would care for the house, doing chores in the night, Exactly. Yeah, Robert's saying ebony skin with silver blonde hair. If they are offended, they can become malevolent, disrupting the household by breaking dishes, spilling milk, keeping the occupants awake at night with their noises, and chasing away livestock, kind of like brownies that are mad. If you contact elves, you invite them to your circle or home, leave out food or milk, and lock up the cat. Most can be asked to aid in home protection rites and help with the raising of energy for all types of spell and ritual work. So, they are found in many places throughout the world. They are very plentiful in Scandinavia, many parts of Europe, and more recently in the United States. They are a very long-lived race and are gifted with sharper senses, grace, agility, and perceptions than humans. Oh, they have great sharp swords. They excel in the arts and crafts, including the art of magic, which they define as the gathering, focusing and directing of natural energy. In general, they dislike technology and live close to nature in the idyllic setting, respecting and working with all aspects of nature. Physically, elves are generally the same height as humans, or taller, but slighter in build. There are some exceptions to this rule, however, and a much shorter variety of elves does exist. In appearance, their faces might seem to be more angular than humans, and they do have the more pointed ears. And, you know, the elves that I like are the ones depicted in Lord of the Rings. Those elves were cool. The elves of Finn, the source of the information on the particular site I got this information from, belong to the first group, or the Selicord. And we're moving right along here. Hopefully, Markham found his mouse. So, Middle Ages, 5th to 15th centuries, elves were confused to some degree with fairies. The more noble version begins with Edmund Spenser, 1552 to 1599, an English poet best known for the Fairy Queen. Their image as a tall and beautiful race of mystical people is further cemented in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien's Hobbit series, nonetheless a popular component in Anglo-Saxon. Names, many of which survive as modern given names and surnames. Elf Council, Elf Friend, Elf Ruler, also women's names such as Elf Beauty. Let's see. Elves of Light are tiny people of Algonquin legend. They live in the forest and enjoy dancing. Their queen is Summer, a tiny but beautiful creature who was once captured by the god Glucksap, who kept her in a moose hide as he entered the wigwam of the giant, Winter. Her very presence caused winter to melt away and spring to come and woke the elves who had been hibernating. Encantado in Portuguese are creatures who come from a paradisiacal underwater realm called the Encant. It may refer to spirit beings or shape-shifting snakes, or often to dolphins with the ability to turn into humans. Earl Konig means Elf King, and is from Germany. He's been known to warn people of their pending deaths. How he appears will relate to that person, how he or she is going to die. It is an air fairy from Germany. And again, it's only seen by those who are about to die. Nobody else sees the Earl Konig. He appears to wear a golden crown and tailored clothing. His home is Valhalla, the Nordic land of the dead. The Earl King. The Earl King is a malevolent creature that is said to lure children away from safety and kill them.
There's a real famous, I believe it was a Schubert song called The Earl King, and it's the father's riding as fast as he can, and son is saying, ride faster, father. The Earl King is coming. His fingers are cold,
Mm-hmm.
and it from the German.
And that's why I like. I love hearing about the English tales, and in literature where they talk about these fairy races that a lot of people haven't even heard of before.
Yeah, the Earl King was apparently enough of a common story that Schubert felt compelled to write what would have been a popular hit song
Mm-hmm.
in his day about him.
Okay, now we got Erdoodle, pronounced Erlu-Edel. These dwarf fairies, they have webbed feet, which they try to keep hidden out of embarrassment. However, they can't swim, and they sink like stones if placed in water. They used to be helpful to farmers, but now seem to dislike humans. Huh, you imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'll blame them again. Now, the Erica Mari, a chieftain among the fairies. This is Mari Siren, or a Mari Siren. Erica means creek that lives near small streams. Her name changes according to toponymia, and she's also known as Mari Aroka or Mari Miraco. Esprit Follet, the house spirit of France, a bogle which delights in misleading and tormenting mortals. So the fairy itself is a supernatural being, fond of pranks, but generally pleasing. Of nursery mythology, they are the personification of providence. The good ones are called fairies, elves, ellie folks, and fays. The evil ones are urchins, oofs, elle maids, and elle women. Alternate spellings include, of course, what I call a fairy is F-A-E-R-I-E. That's my definition or my interpretation of fairy. Whereas you got Disney, who always spells fairy F-A-R-Y. And then, of course, you got fae, which I already went into fae, F-E-Y or F-A-Y. And that's basically the umbrella for everything in the fairy realm. So according to another translation, descendant of the Night, N-E-I-T, the war god, they share a common ancestor with the Fomorians. Some species of fae closely resemble mortals in body type, while other species more closely resemble mortal animals. They inhabit the Shi, though some coexist in the other world with mortals, vary in shape, sizes, magic, and intelligent levels. Exactly, Robert. Robert's sitting there in the chat room, basically doing the different spellings of them. And the spelling of them also has to do with culture and origin. So fairy dust is bright dust cast into the eyes to blind the user from strong spells that overcome the senses. We got fairy food, unnecessary for fairy survival. It's an indulgence. If outsiders to the Shi partake in this fairy food, they are inseparably connected to the Shi and its powers. Fairy hunter, a mortal, usually the cursed or a skinwalker, who fights against fairy oppression and or to win the power of the fae by using the fae's own magic against them. Fairy masquerade. Now that's what I was talking about earlier with in Ireland, where they have the front door facing the back door, so the fairy masquerade can go from one side to the other without disrupting their house. These parties are a favorite among fairies. It is the preferred way to mingle the seelie court with the unseelie court to avoid disruptions and clan wars during important ceremonies where all fae citizens must attend for magical and legal purposes. Favorite materials for masks include the usual lace, beads, chains, spikes, thorns, leaves, flowers, and horns. More unusual decorations consist of flapping butterfly wings, cyclops eyeballs centered on the forehead, growling fox fur, beating hearts, captured stars, and bat wings with no eye holes. It isn't unusual for some fairy faces to be confused as masks. Alright, we talked about this last week, but fairy rings are darker grass making a ring on dead grass, a portal caused by fairies who travel from the mortal world to the Sidhe. All stars must be aligned for it to work. Fairy tales are known as prophecies passed down from druids, the stories of which have traveled over the continents of the mortal world and are collected by the cursed into a book of fairy tales. They are forbidden in the Sidhe because when opened there, the pages fill with actual events as they happen. Prophecies work in cycles. As the story is fulfilled, it begins again. Like a cliche with its own twist, also known as bedtime stories. Fairy time. Time moves swifter in the Sidhe than it does in the mortal world. It moves erratically. It is difficult to predict. Time is marked by cloud drifts and star movements, though a general rule of thumb is that 3 months in the other world can be estimated to a day in the Sidhe. Though time, like midnight, can be delayed. Certain fairy holidays can coincide with mortal ones. Alright, now we're going to Faken. A Faken is highlighted, or a Highland fairy, might appear comical if not for his extremely nasty disposition. The Faken is one of everything. One head, one eye, one ear, etc., all centered directly down the middle of his hairy and feathered body. He has extremely bad temperament and carries a spiked club which he swings as he chases away visitors from his home. He originated in Scotland, also called peg-leg jack. Its element is air. The Highland fairy has an extremely nasty disposition. Chases visitors away from his home atop the highest Highland mountains. He's active all year. He is jealous of flight. He hates all other living things. And is very solitary, well, obviously. Now we got Fallius. There are 4 cities in the Sidhe. Fallius is the capital in the mountains, located in the north. It sustains the stone of Fal and serves as the headquarters of the ruling court, be that Seelie or unseelie, depending on the sovereign and power. Fata is an Italian fae, or white lady. The Fates are the 3 spirits, Clotho, Lochus, and Atropos, which presides over the destiny of every individual. Fate is an individual, as destiny caught up in the pages of the fairy tales. The Norn holds the life and fates of fae and mortal alike in their claw-like hands. Here's my other favorite one, is fawns. I like fawns. Fawns are creatures of the woodland forest. The fawn has 1 horn on its head and a body that resembles a goat below the waist and human above. Fawns tend to be alluring, seductive, and compelling, often preying upon the unsuspecting by using mind control and magic conjured from their pipes or flutes to get what they desire from their victim. According to the elves, if one sees a fawn, avert your eyes, because as soon as they have your attention, you're under their spell. That's why humans have depicted Satan to be a fawn. They are neutral but can be very dangerous. So, Fiorin. This word can be used as a collective word for fairies. It usually indicates hold on a sec.
Well, that was your opening.
Yeah. Who's calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning? I'm not answering the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so Fiorin. Where were we? Yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm not doing the phone right now. Let's see. Type of diminutive fairy in the folklore of England is also a collective word for fairies who are usually kindly towards mankind, or at least neutral. They're depicted as small creatures with a green skin and wearing red hats. They enjoy singing and dancing. Fanadori is a type of brownie from the Isle of Man. He is enthusiastic about helping the farmers, but isn't all that bright. The Fanadori once was tricked to trying to fetch water with a sieve. The Fanadori is at one time a handsome member of the faerie, or the fairy tribe of man. He was exiled and his good looks taken from when he missed the autumn festival to court a human girl. Other translations is a type of brownie from the Isle of Man. Willing worker of prodigious strength. Faerie, a Manx name for the fairy tribe. This singular is fairish. They are the trooping fairies of man, though there does not seem to be any distinction between them and the slave bogey. They are less aristocratic than the fairies of Ireland and Wales, and they have no named fairy king or queen. They were small, generally described as 3 foot in height, though sometimes as 1 foot. They could hear whatever was said out of doors. Every wind stirring carried the sound of their ears, and this made people very careful to speak of them favorably.
Yep.
I don't blame them. So a fae stone is an enchanted stone that resembles a hand mirror or a baby rattle, depending on the connection between the giver and the receiver and the levels of sensitivity. The reflection on the face of it displays what the one who gifted the stone wants the receiver to see and or what the giver gives. Or giver sees. Time and or distance from the giver to the receiver affects its power. The greater the time and distance, the more power the giver has over it. In the absence of the separation, and when in the she, the receiver may see what they wish to see, instead of the other way around. Under these same conditions and in places where time moves slower, the stone is rendered useless between giver and receiver. Also known as a swirly toy, a rattle, and a mirror. The Findius. There are 4 cities in the She. Findius is the capital set in a land pitted with craters, sands, and lava, located in the south. It sustains the sword of Nuada. It's a popular hangout for unseelie creatures. Finfolk. Anthropomorphic fairies who have made it clear that they wish to avoid humans. Though they seem not to wish us any harm, their favorite pastime is gardening, and their underwater world is a paradise of vibrantly colored flower and lush foliage.
Which is also my mother's maiden name, is taken from that. It translated into Fenwick.
Yeah, right.
So I guess I got fairy blood in me somewhere.
It's
if we
common.
go by name.
And Andy, most of your fairy lore does come from Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And Scotland. And they can be found here as well, here in America. And of course, as you know from earlier, Australia's got their own as well. Every culture's got their own. Doesn't mean they're limited to that culture, though. Because they travel astral, they can visit you in meditation as well. Most of them you don't want to mess with, though. The Finfolk, they originated in Scotland, Cornwall, and Wales. They're also known as sea guards in the Ladies' Own. Their element is water. Approach them with caution. They are found under the lochs of Scotland as well, and easy to go in the astral plane. We have Finvara, king of the Connaught fairies. Onog is his consort, supreme king and queen of the sheep. He was famed for his benevolence towards humans, holder of the royal blood necessary to seal the queen into her duties, so that she may rule with the 4 treasures. wears a black cloak holding many great and secret powers affiliated with the Selicord. And now we have the faerie or Feardergs. They're fat, ugly fairies with dark, hairy skin and long snouts and tails which give them a rat-like appearance. They like fairly gruesome practical jokes, so it's best to appear friendly until you can banish them. They originated in Ireland, possibly Scotland. They're known as the Rat Boys. They're element of water. They wear torn and shabby costumes that look as if they date around the Middle Ages. If you find one around, it's best to appear conciliatory. He is morbidly dangerous. They like carrion, and is shiliog, which is an Irish walking stick, which is topped with a skull of unknown origin. They are most active during the winter months, and that makes sense. They like to enjoy the heat near human hearths, but make their homes in damp raths or marshes near the sea. They are found near polluted coastlines, that makes sense too, swamps, marshes, and in coastal ruins. Some legends hold that the Fearderg is an unlucky former human who wandered into fairyland by mistake and now attempts to warn others from making the same mistake. Despite this apparently good-natured move, they revel in cruel and gruesome practical jokes. Okay, so drakes are typically described as smallish cousins to dragons. Like some of the bigger animals, they breathe fire. This trait in turn results in their odoriferous quality, which has been described as a cross between a chicken coop and rotten eggs. And we already hit drake. That was just some more information about the drake that came out. And again, they're benevolent creatures who, in return, residing in a human domicile, will keep the firewood dry and bless the hearth. So the fire sin, or the faerie sheen, these are solitary fairies who help farmers. They're nude, covered with patches of brown, coarse hair, and in general are not very physically appealing. They seem to want to be of service to humans, but they're not known for being very bright. So now we have the faerie. They are mixed, stone-throwing giants. They often ravish cattle and are nasty beings. The faden, unseelie creatures who live underground, known to abduct humans in the otherworld. Their fingers claw through the dirt before they pull mortals under with them. Not intelligent. Faerie, pronounced Faerie. They're so small and light that they are practically invisible, but their distinguishable characteristic is known to us. Their toes point backwards. They seem to pay no attention to humans and change the weather merely for their own sport, rather than for any baneful purpose. They are weather fairies found in Italy. Their favorite element is air, which that makes sense being weather fairies. And they love to whip up windstorms that they can ride in on. Fomorians. Now, the Fomorians are sea monsters. They are survivors of a banished fairy race driven out of Ireland by the Tuatha De Danann. They are grotesquely misshapen bodies which look as if they have been haphazardly thrown together with the leftover parts of assorted animals. So obviously they originated in Ireland. Their element is water, and they're sea monsters. They're very ill-tempered, which I think I would be too. They're active all year, especially at night. They're found at seashores, but contact is not advised. Okay, so another translation of them is they're the original invaders and settlers of the Sidhe. They rule the fae from a distance, moving with the ease of snakes. Organs visible from the outside of their bodies, possessing one leg, one eye, and one arm, all connected into one monstrous form, controls lesser life forms with the use of its glowing blue eye. Greet subjects with this tribute. You will have our hospitality in return for yours. To which the subordinate responds, O great Elotha, with justice we rule, with justice we will die. 7 rulers of the fairy kingdom we hold most high. So Fossagrim, pronounced Fossagrim, they're smaller than humans, perfectly formed except for their feet, which tends to taper off into a misty nothingness. They can be either baneful or playful, depending on their mood of the moment. They're guardians of waterfalls in Norway. They are expert harpers and have beautiful singing voices. They appear as attractive men and women. While they do not intend to harm anyone, their playfulness can get out of hand. The 4 treasures. These treasures are the lifeblood of the fairy kingdoms, where all magic and power originates and sustains and nourishes all fairy kind, without which the fairy kingdom and all of its inhabitants would perish. Only a keeper or someone of the royal bloodline can handle the 4 treasures and survive. So the keepers hold the right to work the power found within a treasure. They are also known as the Stone of Fowl, the Cup of Dagda, the Spear of Lug, the Sword of Nuada. The 4 cities, capital cities in the Sidhe, are the 4 corners of the island. Each of them are ruled by a keeper princess. Each represents a different element and protects one of the 4 treasures. Frog's breath. Magical substance that duplicates one of the 4 elements of fire, water, earth, and air without the nasty repercussions. An illusion that creates a real physical response in the user when duplicating fire. It makes the perfect campfire to sleep on, though a bit stinky. Figlia. A figlia is a sort of personal spirit. They often take an animal form. The Native Americans called them fetches and use them as totems. They serve mostly as personal guardians. The Fylgjar can only be seen by its human familiar before the person dies. It is believed in Icelandic, a child born with a caul over its head will go through life with a fairy companion known as a Fylgjar. And again, the Fylgjar warns its own human of their own death. Fylgja. What's that?
Hell, I think I just assumed it kept that information to itself. I don't see the advantages. I just don't think I see the advantages in knowing.
Oh, when you're going to die?
Yeah. I like the mystery of it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know when that car's going to hit me. All right. The Fylgja is a creature from the Unseelie court. Its membrane copies a mortal's essence and transforms from his or her shadow to become a mirror image in order to fill in for the victim. And it sounds kind of like a doppelganger. As soon as said victim disappears, when in shadow form, yeah. Fylgja also serves as personal guardians. And that was the Fylgja. This is the Fylgjar, a sprite formed from the caul of a membrane born with some children. A tenant spirit controlled by a human master takes form of master's totem animal or acts as his or her double. Shadows, seen only by the masters of those with second sight. Okay, and with that, folks, we're going to quit. That finished off the Fs. I'm pretty comfortable where we're sitting right now. As far as, we might have to do 2 more episodes. And we did go over time. So, are you learning anything, Markham?
Yeah, learning. I was on some of the I could tell that we researched on some of the same sites because I got on the A through L of the Fae, and some of the definitions were the same.
Right. Well,
I just found
and that's a good thing
I
because I mean that shows you that
Right.
and definition is definition is definition. I mean, when it comes to culture and society, they're all going to have the same stories. Now I haven't even pulled out my books. Most of the information I'm pulling out of right now is from websites. So I'm going to have to break out some books and see if I can get some different stuff along with this.
Well, I was fascinated by the one I found that, people don't understand the Eskimo lore that much because they're kind of closed-mouthed about divulging their cultural secrets anyway.
Right.
But I thought if we go back to the A's, there was the Angiaks, which were children of the living dead of Eskimo lore. These people would have children, and because times were hard, they knew they couldn't raise the child, or it would, they were very into the tribe comes first type of thing. So they would take their, these babies that had the misfortune to be born during lean times, and take them out on the snow to die.
Right.
And these people, the Eskimos, believed that they would often find themselves being haunted by these small, miserable ghosts. So I wonder if that was a way to deal with the guilt and the. I mean, even if you know it's for the good of the tribe, it's got to suck to have your kid taken away and tossed out on the ice. And maybe that's a thought form that was brought out by the grieving mother.
Exactly. And Andy, yeah, we're not even close to being done. Again, wait till we get to the mythological creatures. This is just the fairies, and a lot of the mythological creatures exist in the same realm as. And don't get me lying here. I believe the fairies can exist in the third and fourth dimensions. I know the dragons go up to the ninth dimension. It depends. I think I believe the Dragon Council is in the ninth dimension. Again, we'll have to get D.G. Conway on here. It should be phenomenal on the show. But yeah, dragons will be a whole different category. But yeah, no, we're just talking.
And they're just. And by culture, I mean in China, or Asian cultures, the dragons are looked upon favorably. In Western culture, they're looked upon as, pretty much by and large evil.
Oh yeah, look.
There's very few good dragons in the Western view.
Yeah, look at the dragon slayers. I mean, back in Middle Eastern times.
That makes you wonder if there wasn't a remnant. Makes you wonder if there wasn't a remnant of some of the dinosaurs left.
No, and I'm sure what they find in some of the archaeological sites and what they call dinosaurs in some cases were dragons. You can actually you can actually meditate and find dragon guides today still. Dragons do exist on different dimensions. As again, based on your belief system, you can work with dragons. I've got dragons that protect our properties, matter of fact.
How do they feel about the reptilian
Well, the reptilians
aliens?
The reptilians don't come on our property. They're forbidden. from coming on our property, and they know that. You can ask Dave about that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and even if I'm off my property, I don't worry about them. But yeah, dragons are very good to have in your corner, and again, very protective as your friends. So again, next week we'll be hitting Faerie Races episode 3 and carry on from. Anyone got any questions before we go? And yeah, I love I think my favorite kids dragon movie is Aragon.
Yeah,
Aragon was cool.
I love the books.
I never read the book.
I did. I read all. I read all but the last one, and I just didn't want to pay $29 for a Kindle edition.
Right.
So yeah, I'm waiting for that one to go on sale. But I read the other 3. I remember reading the 3rd book and thinking there was supposed to be a trilogy. And it's like, there's no way this kid's going to get this all summed up in one book.
Right. Yeah, I believe they made an Aragon 2, did they not?
I don't think they ever made them. The first one didn't do so well at the box office, so I'm not sure they ever made the second movie. I thought the first one was pretty good. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the first Aragon movie. That book, I read the first one. I was working in D.C., and I was off the next day. I drove, oh my God. I didn't realize there was such a thing as a Walmart Supercenter that wasn't open 24 hours a day. And I drove an hour and a half to find an open Supercenter to buy the second book. I was that into it. I had to have the second book. I think I was almost in North Carolina before I found it.
Oh, okay. And Robert, no, just to explain, no, our protective sphere over our property isn't just astral. It's over. I'm trying to think how to explain it. It's just like a shield, and within the shield is where we have dragons, and we have other creatures that do patrol. And so if anything does get past our shield, they got other things to encounter. So on that note, you got anything to add, Markham?
No. I'll have to PM you. Some news came up from work, so things might be having to change a little bit.
Okay.
But that'll be a PM.
Gotcha. Okay, so on that note, thanks for listening, folks, and you all have a good day, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night.